Welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild. Today we'll be continuing my top 100 with number 61 through 70. This is a strange mix. In this 10, there's some heavy games, some light games, some popular games, some obscure games, and even one real-time game. My number 70 is that real-time game that I mentioned. Now, real-time games I usually hate. And on top of that, this is one of the ugliest, if not the ugliest game in my collection. Not quite as bad as Meltscape, but quite up there. This is a game that's obscure enough that you can usually find it for almost nothing. In fact, that is what I did with Time and Space. I got this game for next to nothing. Wasn't expecting a lot out of it, especially with the real-time element, but then I found I really enjoyed this. This approaches real-time in a very different method. In fact, it's almost the opposite of your average real-time game. So instead of the timers rushing you and having to finish things before the timer is complete, you're setting the timer when you start an action. And that timer represents how long that action takes. You cannot take any actions with that timer until that is finished. Eventually you'll be able to have multiple timers going and it'll ramp up in that regard. But for the most part, it's a matter of I start this action, I have a bit of time to think of my next action and plan it out, but then I'm trying to make sure I'm getting the timing right for when I'm starting that next action, so I'm maximizing that timer and I'm minimizing how much wasted time I have. Thematically, what you're doing in this game is traveling from planet to planet, trying to trade and negotiate with other players, and sometimes forcing those trades, and then using the income from that to upgrade your ship. So, despite being a genre I absolutely hate, this has made it pretty high up on my list of games I absolutely love. Sorry it looks like that, though. So we're going from one of the most obscure games in my collection where time is essential and maximizing the little time you have is crucial to a game that's famous, or perhaps infamous, depending on your point of view, for being a long game. A long, epic game, that is, with Twilight Imperium being my 69. This is one of the most epic games in my collection. The downside, yes, you have to be willing to sit with a decent sized group for probably about 8 hours to be able to play this game. But despite that time necessity, this is an extremely popular game, and you can tell because there's been 4 editions of this game. This is not the most recent edition, this is the one I happen to have. The 4th edition has cleaned up some of the rules, chucked some of the elements that didn't work, enhanced the elements that did, and overall I believe it improved the game quite a bit. This happens to be the version I have. It's still a phenomenal game. Twilight Imperium is an epic 4X games where you're trying to explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate your enemies. And you have lots of options of how to play. You can almost completely ignore the combat and still have a decent chance of winning. The points to win are relatively low, and there's goals in the games where you can score a fair amount of points pretty quickly, so it often means that towards the end of the game, the person that hasn't scored a single point yet still has a decent chance of winning, because they could have been planning a long game and planning for scoring those points. Whereas somebody who's actively pursuing those points is gonna get a lot of resistance from everyone else at the table, because if they're clearly winning, obviously people are gonna pick on them. It's a fantastic game that's absolutely worth the time expenditure. If you can get a group of friends around the table, you'll have a great day with this game. My number 68 is by one of the most prolific designers in the industry. That's Reiner Knizia's, and the game is Almond Ray. It's also a deceptively friendly auction game. So in the first half of the game, you'll draw random provinces and you'll bid on them, and there's not going to be a huge amount of difference between them. But the key is, when you bid on a province, if you outbid somebody else, they'll later have a chance to bid somewhere on another province. And at the end of the bidding, everybody's gonna have a province. The tricky thing is, though, yeah, you've won that province, and now you have to build up that province to start earning points. Then halfway through the game, all ownership is removed from the board, and you're starting again with those provinces already built up, and you're going to be auctioning them off again. So yeah, the first half you've scored a lot of points, you've built up a lot, but now in the second half, all that is reset, and you've put a lot of points out there for other people to bid on. So the auctioning at that point becomes somewhat cutthroat, because there's definitely going to be better provinces than others. And making sure you have that best province is very important. You don't want to end up with a lousy one that the guy didn't do very well in the first half of the game on. So that's Almond Ray, a really great Rana Knizia title that kind of changes up the auction mechanic. It feels very different than your standard dry auction game. My number 67 is going to spark a little controversy, maybe even a little ire, because I know some people who love this game, some people who absolutely hate this game, and there seems to be more in the latter camp. But that's Charterstone. Charterstone is a pseudo-legacy game where you're going to be going through a campaign and unlocking buildings, stickering the map, and building up this map with all these worker placement spots, and actually building the game as you go. And I call it pseudo-legacy because you can actually flip over the board, buy a recharge pack, and play the whole game again on another side. Once you have a finished map on either side, you can just play the game as is and forget the campaign element. Where the controversy arises is because this is a build it as you go worker placement game, there is some potential for broken combos. In theory, that's what I'm told, that you can break some combos. I didn't see it in my game, but it could be that somebody really unlocks all the best stuff, and this one province is so much better than all the others, and there's no reason why anybody would do anything but go this area. I didn't see it in my game. I really did enjoy my game. If that does happen, there's no reason why you can't just flip the board, set it up the way you like, and play it that way from then on. My number 66 is a very popular family weight push your luck game with a bag building element. Yes, that's Quacks Up Quedlinburg. So in this game you are brewing potions. You're doing that by drawing tokens from your bag, placing them on your board, and you can keep placing tokens until you either decide to stop or draw enough negative tokens or bad tokens to cause yourself to bust. Once everybody's done their potions, the strength of the potions determines how much they can spend to buy new ingredients for the potions that would help them progress even further in the next round. There's a couple cool catch-up elements in this game, the one being that even if you bust, you get to choose either points or spending to be able to buy new ingredients. And on top of that, the further somebody progresses ahead of you in the game, the more rat tails you get, which is basically a little extra boost in the next round. Overall, it's a really fun, quick, easy, essentially it's an engine builder without the intense strategy that usually means. Next on my list is a game that looks really cute, but can be really mean. I'm not sure I'll ever forgive James for one of the actions he took against me and ruined my game of this one time, and that's Everdale. So clearly Everdale has an anthropomorphic theme. You're playing as animals trying to build up a community. Now, a lot of people do complain about the tree, which really does increase the table value of the game, but it can get in the way if you're playing 4 players. But with 3 players, it's not an issue. It plays really well. The components for this game are really fantastic. It is basically a worker placement plus tableau builder game. So you're using your workers to get resources, be able to play down cards, and those cards give you powers for later turns. And you also need to make sure you're focusing on getting points at the end of the game. You do have to watch out for a couple of main cards that could take out cards from other players, possibly ruining their entire strategy. Not that it's happened to me. Anyways, Everdale is an excellent game. Now, if you thought Everdale was cute, just wait till you see my number 64. Takenoko. Now, in Takenoko, you have a panda, a gardener, and an emperor. And you have to place tiles in a way that try to keep as many of them happy as possible. So you want to make sure the panda is eating bamboo, or the right types of bamboo to fulfill different goals that you have. The gardener goals require you to make sure the bamboo is grown in the right pattern, and the emperor wants certain tiles to be placed in a certain pattern. So it's basically pattern building. Some of the ways that you make those patterns can conflict with what other people are trying to do. For example, if you're trying to focus on a gardener goal and somebody's going around with a panda and eating up all the bamboo, it can really put a damper on your strategy. So you have to be flexible. It's light, fun, easy to learn, and super cute, so it makes it really attractive to younger kids, and can be super fun for the family, because despite being attractive for young kids, it's still great for adults. I recently did an unboxing of a game by the same publisher and designer as my number 63, and I was excited to see it came with promos for Seasons. Now, in Seasons, you play as mages trying to get resources to be able to spend on cards to build combos. However, while it's easy to get resources and easy to play cards, you're limited on both until you've leveled up your mage. So you're trying to make sure you're leveling up fast enough that you can get out the cards you need, but also making sure the cards you really need are coming out before the cards you don't, so that you're capitalizing on that space you have and making sure you're utilizing the resources so they don't clutter up your resource limit. It ends up being a pretty fun and simple game that can get complicated if you really try to math it out. So it's best to take it lighthearted, take it nice and fun. It's a quick game, it's lots of fun, but if you play this a lot, you can really get into some meatiness and really enjoy it that way too. If you haven't heard of my number 62, I'm not sure what rock you've been under, because my number 62 is Pandemic Legacy Season 1. A lot of people would disagree with me and say Season 0 should be much higher, but personally, I enjoyed the theme from the regular Pandemic, and I really enjoyed going into this game having already played base Pandemic and having a base understanding of what I was doing going in and not being surprised and having to learn lots of new rules, but having it changed up just slightly enough to keep it interesting from season to season, because you're going to be unlocking new content, adding new rules, and learning as you go. So you start with a great game, you end with a slightly more complex, even better game. Absolutely worth checking out, and you may be hearing more from this series in the future. The last game on my list is a light civilization builder that made a big splash when it first came out, but I haven't heard of much since, and that's Deus. Now, part of the reason I talked about less is while the cover's kind of attractive, the board isn't so much. But it's a very solid civilization builder. You are building a tableau of cards in front of you, but the cool mechanic that it uses is, while you have buildings of different types, every time you activate a building type, you're activating every single card you have. So the cards you get out early are going to be activated many times throughout the game. So the earlier you get the card out, the more often you get to use it. So you don't want to build blindly, because you want to make sure you're getting those cards out early that are most helpful that you want to activate as much as possible. So it's a pretty cool civilization building game. There's been a lot of good civilization building games, a few that do it in a short period of time, but I think this is one of the better ones that does good civilization building in a short amount of time. So that was my 61 through 70, probably the more eclectic of the sets so far. Hopefully you enjoyed listening to that and found some games that you really enjoy in the future, and you'll join me again for my number 51 through 60. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check us out on other social media such as Instagram and Facebook. And don't forget to like and subscribe.